There is an ancient secret waiting in the Scriptures, a key of absolute simplicity capable of transforming the way you see life, think, feel, and act. It does not come from some modern book or passing fad. It is an age-old verse that holds within its essence the power of inner renewal. When you understand it, when you make it your own, something begins in you. You are no longer the same. For what was hidden blossoms, the old dissolves, and the new begins to be born. That verse is found in Romans 12:2. Do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Few phrases hold so much truth. It is not just a passage of faith, it is a compass, a proposal of inner freedom. In its simplicity rests an enormous strength. This calling does not ask for toleration of the ordinary, nor a passive acceptance of what limits you. It invites you to rise, to open your eyes, to recognize that the reality around you reflects what dwells in your mind, and that by renewing that mind, everything you see begins to resonate differently, begins to transform. It does not mean changing outwardly first, but from within. It is not about disguising behaviors or imitating formulas, but about letting the breath of truth penetrate your most hidden thoughts, your most intimate convictions. When the mind surrenders to the mold of fear, of others' opinions, of judgments, of rejection, it creates a pattern of life that marches to the rhythm of what you are not. But when you choose renewal, you decide to cast off inherited beliefs, internal murmurs that paralyze you, the voices that have said you are not enough, or you will not succeed, and instead you allow convictions of courage, faith, purpose, clarity to arise. Think of this. What someone like Napoleon Hill calls the power of desire, of sustained thinking, of autosuggestion, is not distant from the biblical. In fact, it coincides with what Paul teaches here. Hill said, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. That same idea pulses in the Scripture. When you renew your mind, when you do not conform to the world's mold, when you break obsolete mental patterns, when you replace fear with faith, complaint with gratitude, doubt with vision, you are sowing seeds of transformation, because every thought repeated with emotion takes root, becomes belief, and that belief governs decisions, habits, actions, results. And mental renewal demands more than momentary inspiration. It requires commitment, discipline, and consistency. It's not enough to desire, you must cultivate. It's not enough to imagine, you must train. It is neither an empty act of faith, nor a passing burst of energy. It is the daily decision to gather thoughts that build up, to deliberate about those that destroy, to guard what you allow into your mind, both alone and in the company of others, in what you read, what you listen to, what you say. Everything you consume shapes your character. If your surroundings are soaked in negativity, messages that denigrate, affirmations of defeat, people who induce conformity, sooner or later you will be shaped by that environment. That is why knowing is not sufficient. You need to consciously choose what to cultivate. This verse does not promise an automatic transformation, but an active invitation to be reborn internally, to awaken. It isn't about living with your mind bound to past patterns, but about unleashing that inner power to build the life that has been designed for you, good, acceptable, perfect. When you apply it, what was dark begins to improve, what was broken begins to heal, what was heavy loses its burden. In that process, the external begins to resonate with the internal. Your relationships align better, your peace grows, your purpose lights up, your identity stops being defined by what others say or expect, and begins to be defined by what you discover you are, and what you were created to manifest. To understand how to truly renew the mind, it is important to see what happens when you don't. When you allow old mental patterns, fear, doubt, guilt, self-criticism, to persist, those invisible forces govern your emotions, your decisions, your relationships. They paralyze you, limit you, keep you from reaching what you could if you really believed you could. But you have inner authority to change that. You have the light needed to open doors where once there were walls, to see possibilities where before you only saw limits. Napoleon Hill identified practical principles that can serve as bridges between the spiritual and the visible. A defined desire, autosuggestion, visualization, conscious control of environment, applied faith. These are not tricks, but ancient tools that revive the truth already inside you. First, you must know clearly what you desire. Not a vague wish nor a diffuse hope, but a concrete vision, a powerful image of what you want to live. That clarity acts like a beacon in darkness, a guide that orients every action, every decision. Second, autosuggestion, repeating words, feeling them with emotion, believing them, engraving them in your mind until they resonate as truth. Repeating affirmations that declare your identity, that affirm you are already capable, that you are already aligned with that greater purpose. Third, visualize with intensity. Imagine not just what you want, but how you feel when you live it, as if you are already there, breathing, acting, celebrating. When you do this with consistency, your mind starts to recognize possibilities, begins to attract what once seemed distant. A fourth essential factor is choosing the environment around you. Not only cleanse your mind internally, but also clean what you allow yourself to see, hear, read, share. Distance yourself from what sows defeat, doubt, fear. Draw closer to elevated ideas, conversations that awaken, books that inspire, people who believe in possibilities. Let your life be a reflection of what you cultivate. And fifth, exercise faith in action. It's not enough to believe. You must move from what you already believe. Decision after decision, word after word, act after act. Even when you do not yet see the fruit, you act from your faith. That faithfulness to the unseen is what carries you from the possible to the manifested. So how to begin in practice? Start each morning with a ritual that connects you to what you want to become. Give thanks for what you already have. Recognize your worth. Remember your vision. Declare affirmations. Visualize your ideal day. Throughout the day, stay aware of what you allow into your mind. News, conversations, your own thoughts. When some limiting idea arises, stop, listen, change it. At the end of the day, evaluate what thoughts did you cultivate today? Which actions honored your vision? Where did you yield to the old mold? Make adjustments. Recommit. This is not a process of occasional options. It is a lifestyle that becomes natural as you practice it. Do not forget that renewing the mind also means being conscious of your real identity. You are not a collection of past mistakes, others' opinions, old wounds. You are someone precious, created with purpose, with destiny, with a calling. When you recognize yourself this way, the inner voices lose power, doubts fade, certainty grows. And with that certainty, you walk differently, you speak differently, you face challenges differently. Performance is no longer measured by what you fear, but by what you believe. No longer by what others expect, but by what God has placed in you and what you choose to assume. You experience God's good, acceptable, and perfect will not as something abstract, but as a lived, tangible reality. It is not a distant ideal. It is the innate result of a renewed mind. When your thoughts align with truth, your heart rests, your purpose funnels in, your peace increases, your inner strength awakens. What once seemed impossible begins to feel near. What was fragmented starts to reorganize. What seems still inflames with action. Maybe you wonder, how long will this take? How many days until I notice? Will I be able to sustain it? These questions are valid. Renewing the mind does not happen overnight. It is not an express change, but a gradual rebirth. Daily, constant, there will be moments of doubt, resistance, fatigue. The inner world resists when you try to liberate it. Dormant fears will surface, old beliefs that made you depend on what others thought. Automatic habits that insist on returning. But every time you choose not to conform, that you rise again, that you hold fast to the vision even when you do not yet see the full light, you are gaining internal ground. You are strengthening spiritual muscle. Imagine your mind like a garden. If you leave it uncared for, weeds will sprout. But if you tend it well, watering what is right, fertilizing your faith, planting purpose, pulling out what harms, protecting what grows, you will see fruit. You will see not only new ideas but habits that care for your health, your relationships, your impact, your service. You will see confidence sprout, values settle, peace establish as foundation rather than occasional dream, because what is sown in the invisible, you will see in the visible. What you think, feel, believe, begins to govern your actions, begins to manifest your character. There are two practices that will prove transformative if you embrace them with consistency. The first is to recognize the limiting beliefs that govern you without you noticing. Fear of rejection, the idea that you do not deserve, the critical voice, rooted doubt, comparison with others. Identify them, write them down, make them visible, confront their lie, replace them with truths born from your spiritual identity. Affirmations that reflect what you truly are: beloved child, one called with purpose, endowed with value, capable. Each time you reject a lie and affirm a truth, you perform an act of power. The second powerful practice is surrounding yourself with an environment that nourishes what you desire to be. Not only cleanse what harms, but build what uplifts. Readings that elevate, images that inspire, music that uplends, people with vision, conversations that awaken hope. All of that shapes, all of it becomes inner strength. And the more time you spend in those spaces, the more your mind gets used to dreaming big, believing in possibilities that once seemed absurd, seeing with the eyes of heart more than with the eyes of fear. Also essential is the humility of continuous learning, being ready to adjust what you think you know, to question truths you believed firm, to let go of what weighs you, because renewing the mind also implies unlearning, releasing burdens, letting go of expectations not your own, letting go of habits that served only comfort but prevented growth. It is a path of courage, saying goodbye to the past, embracing the present with faith, and looking to the future with eyes that the best is coming. And day by day I invite you to take responsibility for your internal dialogue. What you say to yourself when you are alone, what you repeat when no one else is listening, that defines more than you imagine. If you tell yourself, I can't, I am not, this is too hard, you will believe it. But if you say, I can, I am capable, my life has purpose, I walk toward good, then that internal voice becomes your ally, becomes your guide. That voice changes how you make decisions, how you move when no one sees, how you respond to crisis, to lack, to trial. Let your tomorrow be an act of conscious alignment. Upon waking, breathe deeply. Give thanks for 5 things. Remember who you are. Remember where you are going. Declare affirmations that will flood your mind with direction. Visualize the ideal day. Pray or meditate in silence a few minutes. This morning practice does more than it appears. It prepares soil so that during the day internal strength flows, so that when internal or external tensions arise, you do not disconnect but return to center. Accept the challenge of feeding your mind every day with what nourishes. Read passages that strengthen. Listen to stories of those who triumph from within. Converse with people who inspire. Avoid media that poison with fear, doubts, destruction. What you hear, what you see, what you allow entering is like seed that germinates. Choosing those contents consciously is a fundamental part of renewal. You cannot build an inner castle if each day you expose yourself to bricks of self-criticism, insecurity, fear. Another decisive habit is evaluating your day when night falls. What thoughts you allowed, which you planted, which you watered, unintentionally with worry or complaint, which were firm in faith, where you detect yielding to the world's mold. Make a conscious act of correction. Change the thoughts. Change the words you speak. Change the gaze you hold. Every correction is a step that reaffirms your decision not to conform, to choose something different, to live with spiritual dignity. Also, do not underestimate the power of inner silence. Withdraw from noise. Withdraw from external demands, from others' expectations. Dedicate spaces in your day to hear your mind, your heart, that divine spark that pulses within. In those quiet moments, important intuitions are revealed. Truths become clear. Patterns that were hidden are detected. There you give yourself permission to be you, with authenticity, to not please everyone, to not force fit, to be faithful to yourself. Stand firm when the world presses. Not moving with the rhythm of others does not mean isolation, but integrity. Not yielding to doubt is not obstinacy, but faithfulness. Not conforming is not empty rebellion, but recognition that you were created for something greater than comfort. When your mind is renewed, your resistance grows, your clarity increases. Your inner peace no longer depends on circumstances, but on internal convictions that no longer tremble in the wind. And remember, transformation is not linear. There will be setbacks, dark days, moments when you want to give up, wrap your soul in resignation. But each time you rise, each time you choose again, each time in the midst of pain you decide to believe, you are embracing growth. Do not be discouraged if today you are far from your vision. What matters is not how far you've come, but that you continue moving. What matters is not having arrived, but being on the way, being awake, being conscious. We are here now at this point in your story, where what you have heard has ignited something that was already sleeping. That inner spark you may have ignored, though it beat, that flame that dreamed of greater change. Today you remember it. Today you decide to be protagonist, not spectator. Today you take responsibility for your thoughts, your decisions, your emotions. Today you accept that the renewing of your mind is the gateway to the life you long for. Good, acceptable, perfect. Make your commitment visible. Write it in your thoughts, in your actions, in your voice. Renewed mind, transformed life. May those words not just be echo, but engine of daily action. May they be your covenant with yourself, to never go back, to look forward with faith. Commit to what you have learned. Practice autosuggestion with emotion, visualization with detail, conscious mental watchfulness, environment that builds, routines that reinforce your purpose. Also, I invite you to share this message. Do not keep this transformation only to yourself. When someone hears this, when a word touches another heart, something changes in chain. Your personal change can be the beginning of awakening many. Because light multiplies when shared, do not minimize the impact of your steps. However small they seem, each act born of a renewed mind not only propels your growth, but inspires another, your surroundings, the silent world that longs to be illuminated. Always remember that you will see the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God not as something outside you, but as something that lives in you and through you. It's not about waiting for circumstances to change so that you feel well. It's about changing from within so that you see clearly that you already were aligned, already called, already prepared. What seems small today can germinate into something great if you care for it, if you feed it with faith, constancy, love. And if you ever doubt, if you look back and see what you didn't do, also look at what you are doing now. Because changing course does not negate the journey discovered. Each step you take today counts. Every new thought, every affirmation, every conscious act adds up, shapes you, directs you, elevates you. This channel exists to be a platform, to be a space where what you hear here becomes real in your day-to-day. Subscribe if you are ready to walk this path of transformation. Here you will find principles, messages, tools that nourish you when you falter, that affirm when you doubt, that motivate when you fall. Because renewing the mind is not luxury, it is urgency to live with purpose, with faith, with clarity. The mind is fertile ground, the word the seed, actions the harvest. Today you have begun to sow. Now cultivate. Now nourish. Now act. Choose to renew your mind each day, because when the mind changes, everything of yours can begin to change too.